watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's take a look at today's top stories. U.S. President Donald Trump delivered the State of the Union, highlighted immigration, economy, and foreign policy. The UK government has agreed to release files related to the appointment of former Prince Andrew as a trade envoy in 2001. And the Turkish Air Force F-16 fighter jet crashed near a highway in western Turkey, killing its pilot. President Donald Trump delivered the State of the Union address outlining his administration's economic priorities, immigration enforcement plans, and a tough stance on Iran, while drawing strong reactions from both Republicans and Democrats inside the chamber. Here is more from Ubi Shbander.
At just under 2 hours long, it was the longest State of the Union speech by any American president in history. With a number of standing ovations from the Republicans, President Trump even had a bit of back and forth with some Democratic Party representatives who were heckling him. President Trump told them that they should be ashamed of themselves. Our nation is back stronger and better than ever, the president said, touting his economic accomplishments and lower prices for housing, mortgages, as well as lower prices in the supermarket and for groceries. Regarding Iran, President Trump said that Tehran has killed at least 32,000 protesters, shooting them and executing protesters by hanging. The president acknowledged that negotiations are continuing with Iran during his speech, and he said that he believed that the Iranian government wanted to make a deal, but however, President Trump said that he has not yet heard those words from Iran's leaders that they will never have a nuclear weapon. The president added that he would not allow the world's leading state sponsor of terror to obtain nuclear weapons. Too much applause during his State of the Union speech. President Trump said that he believed that Iran, according to his intelligence that he's received, is working to build ballistic missiles that could soon reach the United States. The president also awarded 3 Congressional Medal of Honors as the Commander-in-Chief. The Medal of Honor is the highest military decoration that can be awarded to a soldier. One of those medals was awarded to Eric Salver, who piloted a Chinook transport helicopter that took heavy damage during the operation to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. He sustained serious injuries but survived during the military operation, and he managed to successfully pilot the transport helicopter through heavy enemy fire. Another key signature of President Trump's speech was his dedication to enforcing immigration law and ensuring that criminal illegal aliens are deported back to their home countries. Among the families that the president recognized during his State of the Union speech was the mother of Irina Zarutska, the young Ukrainian refugee who was murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina last year as she was returning home from work. President Trump used the moment to comfort Irina's family and to honor her life, while lambasting Democrats for supporting policies that President Trump said allowed the quick release of repeat felons. The president vowed that he would ensure justice for Irina and that the criminal repeat offenders remain behind bars so they may not be allowed the opportunity to kill again. Trump's speech was a big hit with Republican members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. He even autographed the tie of a representative as the president left the House chambers at the end of his speech. Mubi Shabander, A News, Washington.
Senior Iranian officials have signaled readiness to reach a nuclear agreement with the United States, describing the upcoming Geneva talks as a historic opportunity for a fair and equitable deal. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said diplomacy could deliver results quickly if political will exists on both sides. Tehran insists the negotiations focus solely on its nuclear program and the lifting of U.S. sanctions. At the same time, Iranian officials warn that any military strike would trigger a regional response. The statements come as Washington reinforces its presence in the Middle East, deploying advanced fighter jets and carrier strike groups. U.S. President Donald Trump addressed tariffs in his State of the Union, defending their economic impact while responding to a recent Supreme Court setback. A new 10% levy is now in effect, with the White House signaling a possible rise.
A new US 10% import charge took effect at midnight, replacing broader duties struck down by the Supreme Court last week. President Donald Trump has indicated he wants the rate raised to 15%, but no formal order has been issued, and Customs and Border Protection is enforcing the 10% rate for now. The earlier duties, ranging from 10 to 50%, had generated more than $175 billion in federal revenue, according to the Penn-Wharton budget model. Plaintiffs who challenged the previous measures have filed motions in lower courts seeking refunds. In his State of the Union, President Trump claimed his trade policies had driven economic gains, while criticizing last week's Supreme Court ruling that blocked his previous global import measures.
I used these tariffs, took in hundreds of billions of dollars to make great deals for our country, both economically and on a national security basis. Everything was working well. Countries that were ripping us off for decades are now paying us hundreds of billions of dollars. And then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling. But the good news is that almost all countries and corporations want to keep the deal that they already made. Right, Scott?
Meanwhile, markets were cautious on Tuesday. Global stocks opened lower amid uncertainty over trade policy, though major US indexes later closed higher, with technology stocks leading gains.
Germany's chancellor is in Beijing for talks aimed at strengthening trade ties while addressing growing economic imbalances. The visit comes as Europe reassesses its relationship with both China and the United States.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met Chinese Premier Li Qiang in Beijing on Wednesday as part of a two-day visit focused on resetting economic ties. Before departing for China on Tuesday night, Merz stressed that cooperation must be based on fair and transparent competition, adding that both sides should rely on jointly agreed rules.
We also want to discuss how we can remedy the situation. For example, where overcapacity has arisen, or where there are export restrictions, where there are restrictions on access to competition that distort and prevent competition. We want to exploit the potential of our partnership, not diminish it.
China was Germany's largest trading partner last year, but Berlin has raised concerns about a widening trade imbalance and mounting pressure on its manufacturing sector. Li called on both countries to safeguard multilateralism and free trade, remarks seen as a reference to ongoing US tariff policies that have disrupted global markets.
China and Germany are comprehensive strategic partners who have accumulated successful practices of benign competition and integrated development. China-Germany cooperation is mutually beneficial and has brought tangible benefits to the people of both countries.
Merz is accompanied by senior executives from major German companies, including Volkswagen and BMW.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Israel for a two-day visit. Modi was welcomed by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and is expected to deliver remarks to Israel's Knesset. Our correspondent in Tel Aviv brings us more.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Israel for a two-day visit aimed at strengthening economic, defense, and strategic cooperation. This is the first visit by Prime Minister Modi since 2017, and it's a relatively rare visit by a foreign leader to Israel since the Gaza war began. Modi was met at the airport by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who calls the Indian leader a personal friend. The visit is expected to focus heavily on economic ties. Bilateral trade between India and Israel totaled $3.62 billion last year. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that they will discuss cooperation in AI, high tech, as well as quantum computing. But defense cooperation and defense ties are expected to be a heavy focus of these talks. India is the largest purchaser of Israeli weapons, and India is reportedly very interested in Israeli air defense systems, including the Iron Dome, as well as medium and long-range missile defense. They are also expected to discuss a possible agreement for India to purchase Israeli anti-drone technology. Now, strategic ties between the two countries are also expected to be on the agenda of these talks. Israel has said that India will participate in what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling a hexagon of alliances within and around the Middle East. He said that is meant to act as a counterbalance to the axis of Iran and their proxies. Of course, Modi's visit comes during a period of extreme tension in the Middle East. On Thursday, Iran and the U.S. are meeting for talks that are being viewed essentially as a last opportunity to reach an agreement on Iran's nuclear program and prevent U.S. strikes on Iran. The United States has put together what's understood to be the largest buildup of air power in the Middle East since just before the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Blake Sifton for A News in Tel Aviv.
We are following developments in two major misconduct investigations involving senior public figures in the UK, with police concluding searches linked to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and new details emerging in the Mandelson case.
UK police have concluded searches at Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's former residence in Windsor Great Park as part of an investigation into alleged misconduct in public office. Thames Valley Police began searching Royal Lodge in Berkshire after Andrew's arrest at Sandringham last Thursday, which coincided with his 66th birthday. He was detained for 11 hours on suspicion that he shared sensitive information with Jeffrey Epstein while serving as a UK trade envoy. Andrew was released under investigation and has denied any wrongdoing. Assistant Chief Constable Oliver Wright said officers had now left the Berkshire property, bringing the search activity to an end. He said the investigation remained ongoing and warned that further public updates were unlikely in the near term. The developments come after MPs backed the release of official files relating to Andrew's appointment as a UK trade envoy. The House of Commons approved the move anonymously without a formal vote. Trade Minister Sir Chris Bryant said the government will to release the documents as soon as is practicable and possible within the law. However, material linked to potential misconduct in public office could be withheld on prosecutors' advice. In Parliament, Bryant criticised Andrew's conduct, calling him rude, arrogant and entitled. He cited a visit to his constituency, saying Andrew insisted on travelling by helicopter, unlike Queen Elizabeth II, who travelled by a cart. He added that arrogance was not a criminal offence. Earlier this week, Australia and New Zealand backed plans to remove Andrew from the royal line of succession, a move that would require the agreement of all 15 Commonwealth realms where the British monarch is head of state. Meanwhile, Lord Mandelson's lawyers say he was arrested over what they described as a baseless claim that he was preparing to flee the country and are demanding that Metropolitan Police release the evidence used to justify his attention. In a statement, his legal team said his overriding priority is to cooperate with the police investigation, as he has done throughout this process, and to clear his name. The former Labour peer and ex-British ambassador to the United States was detained on Monday on suspicion of misconduct in public office and released later the same evening. Police had initially planned to interview Mandelson on a voluntary basis, but changed course after assessing the alleged flight risk. He denies any wrongdoing. Zena Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service has accused Britain and France of working with Kiev to help it obtain nuclear weapons to strengthen its position in peace negotiations. The agency provided no evidence, and the claims were swiftly denied by Ukraine and France, with Paris calling them an outright lie. Britain has not immediately commented. Separately, Russia's foreign ministry warned of the risk of a direct military confrontation between nuclear powers and the potentially grave consequences. The accusations come as Moscow demands Kiev surrender the remaining part of Donetsk, a condition Ukraine has repeatedly rejected. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss President Donald Trump's State of the Union address and its implications for the U.S. economy and the midterm elections. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Now we turn to Washington, where President Donald Trump delivered the longest State of the Union address in U.S. history, as he sought to reshape the narrative ahead of this year's critical midterm elections. Donald Trump used a marathon speech to proclaim that the country is winning again, touting job figures, investment pledges, energy production, and new initiatives like federally seeded savings accounts for newborns. But his rosy depiction of the economy clashed with widespread voter concerns over affordability, tariffs, and rising costs. And he doubled down on controversial policies, even defending tariffs that the Supreme Court recently struck down. Joining us from New York is Ivani Vassiler, professor at State University, to help unpack the speech, its political significance, and what it could mean for American voters as the midterm approach. Professor Vassiler, welcome to the program, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So, Professor Vassiler, overall, how would you characterize the tone and purpose of Donald Trump's State of the Union address?
The State of the Union address is an obligation, a constitutional obligation. All presidents of the United States must, every year, present a report to the Congress of the United States, a report focusing on the achievements of his presidency. So one of the objectives of the State of the Union address from President Trump was precisely that: defend his presidency, his actions, with a very positive tone about what his government has accomplished in the past year, that indeed it was the first year of President Trump's second term. And the other objective, obviously, was to prepare the terrain to put the Republican Party in good light, considering that the elections are coming, the midterm elections, where what is at stake is the entire House of Representatives that are going to be renewed, and a part of the Senate. And as we already know, according with the latest polls, the indications are that it's likely that the opposition party, the Democrats, may make significant gains in the elections in November.
Donald Trump declared the United States was winning so much economically. How does that align with current economic data and voter sentiment?
This is a little bit confusing, to say the least, because part of his statements during the speech are out of context. There are some gains. In other words, the economy of the United States is not stagnate, is still growing, but is not growing as expected by the economists, and not growing according to what the popular sentiment would like to. In fact, several public opinion polls indicate that most Americans are not, say, happy with the economic direction of the United States. There is a word here used in the United States that everybody's talking about, that it is affordability. So the voters in U.S., millions of people, they don't believe that what they buy or should buy today in U.S. are affordable. In other words, there is not enough money to consume what Americans are used to consume. So there is a little bit of lack of context, discrepancy between the president's speech and what is going on, say, on the streets of the United States.
So the president defended his tariff policies even after a Supreme Court ruling against them. What are the legal and economic implications of that strategy?
So the Supreme Court of the United States decided that the tariffs that were imposed in April 2, 2025, the so-called Liberation Day, according to the Supreme Court, the tariffs are not constitutional. Therefore, the president made a mistake in imposing tariffs the way that he did. Obviously, this is considered here by many analysts as a major defeat for the president, institutional defeat. The tariffs are in the center of his economic program. And again, facing this negative decision coming from the Supreme Court, the President of the United States promised that he's going to impose global tariffs. And what's going to happen legally is that probably there are going to be several legal actions against this new round of tariffs, legal actions as they happened previously. Many businesses in U.S., American business, oppose the imposition of tariffs, and the president is going to face this again, and likely is going to face opposition from the Congress, considering that the Supreme Court was very clear in saying that tariffs are taxes, and in the realm of taxes, the last word comes from the Congress of the United States.
Professor Rosseller, given Trump's current approval ratings and the approach of midterms, did his address do anything to change the political landscape?
So the change in the political landscape could take place in November in case that the House of Representatives, for example, will shift. The current majority is a Republican majority. So at this moment, the president has the support of his party, the Congress. There is not much that the opposition can do. In case that the Democrats will win the House of Representatives, what can happen is that the Democrats will try to block actions from the president. That is not likely, but could be that even the Senate would change the balance of the forces there, and that the Democrats could be majority in the Senate, which would have even further implications, negative implications for the president, but this is unlikely. So from now on, all eyes, all attention are going to be on the elections in November and how Americans are going to position themselves in this competition.
So looking ahead, which legislative proposals mentioned by the president are most likely to gain traction in Congress?
The legislative proposals of the president are one in relation to creating a fund for newborns, a fund looking at their retirement. The president is proposing reduction in the prices of medicines, so the lower cost of medication for Americans. And also he mentioned, although without very specifics or many specifics, to reduce the price of electric power, electric energy, the prices are really increasing as a result of the development of data centers for artificial intelligence. What is more likely, we don't know. It's difficult to say because, again, it's unpredictable the ways that the Congress now is going to react as they face these proposals. And I must say that these proposals, including another one without specifics about the health care, we don't know how these proposals are going to arrive at the Congress of the United States. The proposals seem to be still in an incipient phase, and there is no date for the Congress to debate them. Not yet, no date yet.
And finally, what do you see as the biggest takeaway for voters, and how might this speech influence their choices this November?
So we have to look at now the public opinion polls. Usually in the United States, after the State of the Union speech, there is a tendency of more positive gains for the president after this speech. We don't know if this will be the case. At the moment, the popularity of President Trump is around the 30s, 38%, 37%. That is considered low in comparison with other presidents, even in comparison with his first presidency. So let's see. Certainly, starting today, several polls are going to emerge, and we are going to have an idea how Americans reacted to the speech that was a speech that was on the script. It is important to notice that. We all know that President Trump is quite unpredictable, but during the speech he was not. He followed a script, he followed what was prepared for him to say. So we have to wait, really.
Professor Ivanova Soleri, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights on this landmark address. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. A Turkish military aircraft has crashed in western Turkey, resulting in the death of its pilot. Authorities say rescue teams were immediately dispatched, while both military and judicial investigations are now underway.
A Turkish F-16 fighter jet crashed in Turkey's western Balıkesir province early Wednesday, killing its pilot, according to a statement by the National Defense Ministry. The ministry said radio contact and tracking data were lost with the aircraft shortly after it took off from the 9th Main Jet Base Command in Balıkesir at 12:56 a.m. local time. The incident occurred during what was reported as a training flight, but authorities have not yet released further details on the exact circumstances leading to the crash. Search and rescue operations were launched immediately after communication was lost, and the crash site was quickly located. According to local press reports, the aircraft crashed near the Istanbul-Izmir highway, scattering wreckage across a wide area. In its statement, the Defense Ministry confirmed that the pilot had been killed and said the cause of the accident would be determined following an investigation by an examination team. Turkish officials have expressed their condolences to the pilot's friends and family, who has since been identified as Major Ibrahim Bolat. Balıkesir Governor Ismail Ustaoğlu has expressed his sympathies. Azerbaijan's defense minister also sent a message to his Turkish counterpart, expressing his country's condolences for the death of the pilot. Meanwhile, Turkish Justice Minister Yilmaz Tunç announced that the Balıkesir Chief Public Prosecutor's Office had opened a formal investigation into the crash. He said the chief public prosecutor, a deputy prosecutor, and 2 additional prosecutors had arrived at the scene to oversee the inquiry. The investigation is expected to examine technical data, flight records, and other evidence to determine the cause of the accident. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Pakistani and Afghan forces clashed along their border on Tuesday, each blaming the other for starting the deadly violence. It comes just days after Pakistani airstrikes killed at least 17 people inside Afghanistan around midnight on Saturday, according to officials. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Tensions briefly flared along the border on Tuesday as Afghan and Pakistani forces exchanged fire in Nangarhar's Nazian district. The clash lasted several hours before subsiding, with no casualties reported. Both sides blamed each other for the confrontation. Pakistan maintains that its actions are aimed at armed groups it says are operating from Afghan territory, a charge Afghan authorities have consistently rejected as baseless. With tensions flaring at the border and diplomatic channels now engaged, the situation remains fragile. Amir Khan Muttaqi, the foreign minister of Afghanistan, held a telephone conversation with Rosemary DiCarlo, the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. According to Afghanistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Muttaqi expressed deep concern over what he described as the targeting of civilians in Sunday morning's strikes. He called on foreign diplomats to visit the affected areas to verify his claim that no armed individuals were killed, despite Pakistan's assertions that militants were targeted. In a statement, the ministry said that over the past 4 years, similar Pakistani attacks have only harmed civilians, and that not a single armed individual claimed by Pakistan has been confirmed killed. The United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan has also confirmed civilian casualties, including 13 members of one family. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Iran has signaled it's ready to forge defense ties with Armenia. Major General Abdulrahim Mousavi emphasized the importance of increased cooperation between the two countries during a meeting with Armenian Defense Minister Soren Papikyan in Tehran. Our correspondent Turay Shirelilo has the details.
Armenian Defense Minister Soren Papikyan visited Tehran and met with President Masoud Pezeshkian, Chairman of Chief of Staff of Iran's Armed Forces, Major General Abdulrahim Mousavi, and Defense Minister Brigadier General Aziz Nasirzadeh. According to official sources, expansion of bilateral defense ties as well as developments in the South Caucasus were discussed during the visit on Tuesday. President Pezeshkian told the visiting minister that Iran is determined to finalize the comprehensive strategic partnership agreement with Armenia. He stated that Tehran is serious in strengthening economic and corridor cooperation with Yerevan, considering the friendly relations between their governments. Also in the meeting with Iran's top military official, General Mousavi expressed Tehran's satisfaction with the peace process between the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Azerbaijan. Chairman of Chief of Staff of Iran's Armed Forces expressed Tehran's readiness to develop defense cooperation with Yerevan. And in the meeting with his Armenian counterpart, Iran's defense minister welcomed expansion of ties with Armenia in the context of mutual understanding and strategic partnership. General Nasirzadeh stressed that regional security must be ensured through interaction and cooperation of regional states, rejecting presence of foreign countries in the region. The visit came on the eve of Iran-US indirect nuclear talks scheduled for Thursday in Geneva and amid escalation of tensions and speculation of war between Tehran and Washington following US military buildup in the region. Turaj Shiralilu, Tehran, Foreign News.
The 10th trilateral meeting of the Foreign Relations Committees of the Parliaments of Azerbaijan, Turkey and Georgia was held in Baku. Addressing the meeting, Turkey's Foreign Affairs Minister Fuat Oktay said peace and stability in the South Caucasus remain a priority for Turkey and voiced strong support for the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace process. Participants also touched on regional connectivity projects and broader geopolitical developments, reaffirming their commitment to closer trilateral cooperation. Georgia has found itself at the center of an escalating diplomatic debate as Western partners call for a stronger alignment against Russia, while the Georgian government pushes back against what it sees as a pressure that could threaten national security and sovereignty. Our correspondent in Tbilisi brings us more.
The British and French ambassadors to Georgia have called on the country to strengthen its role in international efforts against Russia, while firmly rejecting claims that anyone is asking Georgia to enter direct military conflict. UK Ambassador Gareth Ward said clearly that calls for Georgia to open a second front are false and part of disinformation. He stressed that Georgia's role should focus on economic and political measures, including aligning with sanctions imposed by the European Union and preventing Russia from earning revenue through oil, gas, or access to military supplies. Ward noted that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is especially relevant for Georgia, as Russian troops still occupy 20% of its territory following the 2008 war. French Ambassador Olivier Courtot reinforced that message, saying that Russia must be contained not only in Ukraine but also in other countries facing Russian pressure, including Georgia. He added that Europe remains committed to strengthening Georgia's long-term security and integration with Western institutions. These statements drew a strong reaction from Georgian Parliament Speaker Shalva Papuashvili, who accused foreign partners of pushing policies that could escalate tensions. He argued that imposing sanctions on Russia could risk economic damage and potential military confrontation with Russia, and said that Georgia's priority is maintaining stability and protecting its population. The diplomatic disagreement comes as the EU ambassador Pavel Herchinsky recently noted that Georgia's trade with Russia has increased while the European Union reduced its own economic ties, highlighting concerns in Brussels. At the same time, divisions inside the European Union have complicated the broader sanctions strategy. German Ambassador Peter Fischer confirmed that the European Union's proposed 20th sanctions package included measures affecting Ulevi Port, which is a strategic oil terminal on the Black Sea and is the part of the middle corridor linking Europe and Asia. The package was blocked by Hungary and Slovakia, two conservative EU member states considered political partners of Georgia. Fischer noted that Hungary has often supported Georgia politically inside the EU, but cautioned that Budapest alone cannot secure Georgia's European integration, underscoring the limits of bilateral alliances in a process that requires unanimous support from all member states. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Uzbekistan has begun geological exploration at 3 oil and gas blocks in Afghanistan, while the two countries move to strengthen broader economic cooperation.
Uzbekistan has launched geological exploration works at the Muhammad Jandagar, Shamar and Ahmedabad blocks in northern Afghanistan. The project is being implemented by Uzbek Overseas Geology Company, which received a license from Afghan authorities to search for hydrocarbons as well as iron and copper deposits. The move builds on earlier cooperation in Afghanistan's energy sector. In October 2024, an Uzbek company signed a 10-year contract to explore and develop the Toti Maidan gas field, with planned investments of $100 million in the first year and up to $1 billion over a decade. The field covers around 7,500 square kilometers and includes about 30 wells, with extraction expected to begin soon. At the same time, Tashkent and Kabul have agreed to accelerate the entry into force of their preferential trade agreement. Bilateral trade has grown 2.5 times in 5 years, from $653 million in 2021 to $1.7 billion in 2025. And the two sides have set a target of increasing turnover to $5 billion. The expansion of geological projects and trade mechanisms reflect a broader strategy to deepen economic engagement between the two countries. It is Sivil Vajap reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
Foreign business activity in Kazakhstan is on the rise, with a notable shift in the geography of investment and corporate presence. New official data points to a sharp increase in companies with Chinese ownership. Here is more from our correspondent.
Kazakhstan is seeing a clear increase in foreign business activity, with China emerging as the main driver of this growth. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, in 2025, the number of registered legal entities and branches with foreign ownership rose by 8%, reaching 64,000. The fastest growth came from companies with Chinese ownership. The number increased by 56% to 8,400. A similar trend was recorded for businesses from Uzbekistan, up 43% to 8,500 companies. At the same time, the presence of several traditional partners declined, with a reduced number of companies linked to Russia, Turkey and Kyrgyzstan. This trend fits into a broader regional picture. China remains a strategic investor across Central Asia, and by mid-2025, the total volume of accumulated Chinese investment in the region reached nearly $36 billion, 1.5 times higher than in 2020. A significant share of this growth has been concentrated in Kazakhstan, which has become the largest recipient of Chinese capital, accounting for about 1/3 of the regional total. Analysts note that the investment is gradually shifting away from the raw materials sector toward the manufacturing and energy. This points to a change in the nature of China's presence in the region, from primarily resource-based to more structured and long-term. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A-News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss rising US-Iran tensions and Tehran's regional diplomacy. See you shortly.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
We have a dependency on the Russian economy, as we do with any economy, because we currently import a large volume of goods.
Armenia has always been Russia's closest and best friend in every matter. But today, Russia has abandoned and dumped Armenia.
During the 2020 war, we were in strategic relations with Russia. Not only did they not help, but they didn't help even when requested.
They brought in gasoline from Azerbaijan, and the price dropped by 50 drams. When you fill a 20-liter tank, that is a saving of 1,000 drams. That is not a small amount of money for many people, especially for those living in the regions.
Azerbaijan? No, I wouldn't want that. Importing goods from Azerbaijan. Never.
After all, we all make mistakes. Armenian mistakes are no less significant. And it seems to me there is quite a lot of blood in or on our hands as well.
In my opinion, the Americans proposed this, the Trump route. It suits us, and our government has agreed because it really brings us a lot of benefit.
I am much more in favor, of course, of Armenia having closer ties with the West.
Welcome back to A News. U.S.-Iran tensions are hitting a critical peak as President Donald Trump used his State of the Union address to sharply accuse Iran of rebuilding its nuclear program and developing missiles capable of reaching U.S. soil, even as he stressed a preference for diplomacy. The warnings come amid an unprecedented U.S. military buildup in the Middle East and Mediterranean, including multiple aircraft carrier strike groups deployed near Iran. At the same time, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has welcomed progress in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process, calling it a step toward strengthening regional security and cooperation. During a meeting in Tehran with Armenian Defense Minister Suren Papikyan, Pezeshkian emphasized expanding comprehensive ties with neighbors and finalizing a strategic partnership with Armenia, highlighting Tehran's dual focus on both regional stability and major geopolitical challenges. With us live from Istanbul is Associate Professor Dr. Zaur Gasumov of the Turkish-German University to help us unpack these developments and what they mean for regional and global stability. Professor Gasumov, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Gasumov, how do you assess the tone and strategic messaging behind President Donald Trump's latest State of the Union on Iran?
Well, the U.S. aims to end somehow the nuclear program of the Islamic Republic of Iran and to put either it under control or to end it. And the measures are various. So on the one hand, we have seen, or to put it better, we have been seeing a political dialogue, the meetings between the American side and the Iranian side. So we have a stable actual negotiation process. On the same hand, of course, we have also various measures of influencing and of making clear that a certain solution should come.
Professor Gasumov, to what extent do you believe the U.S. military buildup is intended as bargaining leverage versus preparation for potential conflict?
Well, it's both. It is also a tool, a very potent tool, showing that the military buildup can be used for conduction of a military operation of a very large scale. In the same time, the political dialogue continues, and the American side didn't claim that political dialogue would end now. So we have here both phenomena. By the way, Iranian side does actually the same. So on the one hand, Tehran insists on continuity of the dialogue. On the other hand, there were military drills with Russia in the region.
But Iran's foreign minister says a deal with the United States is within reach. How realistic is that, and what concessions would Tehran likely demand?
Well, in case with Iran, what we see is a difference of that what is going on in negotiations. So the negotiations are in closed format. And the other issue is what the Iranian officials tell vis-a-vis the Iranian audience and Iranian public. So what we observe in Iran now is actually quite strong positioning that Iran has its own red lines and that the nuclear program of Iran is Iranian own issue and so on. But in the same time, it's certainly a quite a huge difference between the positions in and outside of negotiation room.
In your view, what are the possible regional ripple effects if talks fail and hostilities escalate, especially in the Gulf and the broader Middle East?
Well, there are two alternatives actually for the case if the negotiation ends with fiasco for both sides and if US would lead a military operation. In case if it's a short-term issue, 3-4 days for the regime change, that would be really a quite, let us put in a way, minor evil in case if every kind of military operation is nil. But in case if that would take weeks, months, that would. There isn't a possibility that the entire region would burn.
Professor Gassimov, turning to the South Caucasus, how significant is Iran's support for the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process in Tehran's regional strategy? Well,
Iran tries, of course, to intensify its diplomacy in general. So it's not only about the dialogue with the United States, it's also about its ties with Russia, China, and also the region of the Caucasus. So we have witnessed several travels in the last months of Iranian officials to the various countries and vice versa. Iran tries to host also international politicians, and actually their number is very, very tiny. And the issue that Armenian interests came to Tehran is more an exception than a rule the last months. So it's I wouldn't overestimate that. It's an attempt to do in a way that it's the business as usual, and but the military cooperation, even the very, very tense one and very intensive one between Yerevan and Tehran, wouldn't change the situation around Iran revolutionary and radically in case if a military operation led by US and its allies would get realized.
And finally, what is the most important thing viewers should understand about Iran's current foreign policy posture, both its red lines and its possible openings?
Well, for Iran, it is important now to save time, to stay in power, to preserve the positions it still has, and to let the escalation of the situation around the country just to end and to disappear. And somehow Iran hopes very much to, actually the ruling elite in Iran hopes very much just to overcome a couple of years to survive until the next administration would come in office in Washington, D.C. So that is the point Iran struggles for. Elites. And I should add also that the situation dramatically changed within 6-8 months after the public protests and the fate of these protests in the country, because the ruling elite understand that the public support is very, very vanishing in the country in case of the war.
Professor Zaur Gasumov, thank you for joining us from Istanbul and sharing your insights on these extremely consequential developments in U.S.-Iran relations and regional cooperation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for joining us.